Good morning and welcome back to Mae Sot, Thailand. It is Wednesday, July 22nd, and I am walking down the main street here in Mae Sot on a really sunny day, really nice day, and I'm heading towards the Braverly Cafe for a morning cup of coffee. And on my way there, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about some good news. The good news, of course, is that it looks like the visa amnesty for foreigners in Thailand has been extended for perhaps another 2 months, from August 1st until September 26th. Why September 26th? No one really knows, but that's the date that has been chosen for the ending date of the visa amnesty. There's also some confusion about really what it is. I mean, is it really a visa amnesty? Because before this, the government or the immigration officials said quite clearly that no, they are not giving us another visa amnesty. They are not extending the current visa amnesty. But after the vote in the cabinet here in Thailand yesterday, all the articles that you read basically say, you know, the headlines are trumpeting, visa amnesty has been extended until September 26th. So whatever it is you want to call it, it looks like foreigners like me who are in Thailand with an expired tourist visa, we don't have to leave the country this week, which is a big relief. We can stay in Thailand for perhaps as long as September 26th if we choose to do so. Anyway, I've almost arrived at Braverly. I'm going to pop inside and get a cup of coffee. And this is Braverly Cafe, in case you didn't see my previous video about this place. I always like their slogan, Braverly up there, bikes, bagels, and bags. I'm not quite sure what it has to do with bikes, but you can get a bagel here, and they sell their own handmade bags and other items. And there's the sign for Braverly up there. And the We Are Open sign. It's nicely air conditioned inside, and they have some really comfortable seating. And these are their hours in case anyone wants to come here someday. Tuesday to Saturday, they're open, 8:30 till 6. Sunday to Monday, they're closed. Braverly. Okay, I'm inside Braverly. I haven't put in my order yet. I just thought I'd show you a little bit of the inside again. I filmed a little bit of it in a previous video, but here I am again. And just show you a little bit of the interior. Yeah, you can see it behind me. They've got this nice corner sectional couch arrangement over here. It's really quite comfortable. And the last time I was here, I took a seat over here on one of these sofas. Also really nice. And they even have a swinging bench here. Let's give this a try. Yeah, that's actually kind of nice. Kind of a porch swing. Yeah, I like that a lot. Maybe I'll move from my seat over there to here. Nah, I think I'll enjoy the sofa. Like I said, there's the sofa in the corner. And yeah, I guess in terms of the bikes part of their slogan, they actually have one wall here decorated with bicycle wheels, and that's kind of cool. Bicycle chain, you know, spelling out the letter B, which is their the logo for Braverly. And they have a nice big table here, you know, for 4 or 5 or 6 people could sit around this table. And that's the ordering area. And I don't know much about it, but this cafe is part of or supported by an NGO as well. And they have a workshop here, not a workshop, kind of a craft center with sewing machines, and they make a lot of their own handbags and articles like that that are for sale. And you can see it just across the way there. That room over there, you can just sort of see some sewing machines down there at the bottom. And they make all their crafts over there. And I showed this last time as well, but let's take another quick look. These are some of the handbags that they make over there at the craft center. And then some small purses as well. So there you have it, Braverly Cafe, a really nice place. The menu here is pretty simple. Coffees, hot or cold, hot or iced, tea, some other drinks that they make, and then a few pastries, muffins, pizookie, bagels, kind of breakfast style here, eggs and toast. Build your own omelet with all these toppings. And then down here at the bottom, paninis, and you can get a bacon Caesar salad. And there's a picture of some of the items that they make. The last time I was here, I had a iced latte, of course, and a panini, apple bacon panini, which was quite tasty. I liked it a lot. I almost ordered the exact same thing today because, it was so good. But I thought I'd do something a little bit different, mainly because, as I said, their slogan is bikes, bagels, and bags. So I thought I really should try one of their bagels. So I ordered another iced latte, and then I ordered a garlic, what does it say here? A garlic, onion, and cheese bagel. And they've already been brought to my table, so I'll let you take a look at them. There's my iced latte. Comes in this nice pitcher arrangement. And there is the bagel. Garlic, onion, and cheese bagel. Man, I have no idea when I last had a bagel, so this ought to be quite interesting. Okay. I'm going to start with my iced latte. I love the pitcher, that it comes in. Very cool. Glass. It's really nice. I mean, it's sweet. So, if you don't like sweet coffee, you could probably ask them not to sweeten it. But it's not overly sweet, It tastes just about right to me. A nice, strong coffee flavor. So, yeah, that's really good. It's exactly what I wanted. And now my bagel. Oh, it's nicely toasted. Yeah, toasted on the inside and the top. And it comes with cream cheese. And again, the last time I had cream cheese, I cannot tell you. It's only since I've been here in Mesot that I've sort of made an effort to go out to cafes like this, where, you can get food like this. I don't normally do it for some reason. So the last time I had bagel and cream cheese, man, I couldn't even tell you how many years ago it was. Of course, it was a staple of my diet back in my university days, muffins and bagels with cream cheese, that kind of thing at the university coffee shops. But anyway, let's give this a try. I'm just going to try a little bit of the cream cheese just on its own. So good. So let's get this spread on the bagel. bagel with cream cheese. Yeah, it's good. I mean, if you've ever had a bagel in your life, you know exactly what I'm having, you know? It's a classic bagel with cream cheese. I don't know whether they make them here themselves. I kind of assume that they do. Well, for now, I'm going to shut off the camera and just settle in and enjoy the rest of my bagel. I'll check back in with you in a few minutes. My bagel and coffee at Braverly is over. Yeah, while I was sitting there, I started to wonder what makes a bagel, because it definitely tastes different from other breads, you know? It's not like it's just bread in a circle. So it has a different flavor, and I don't really know where that flavor comes from. And of course, it has quite a different texture. The texture, that chewy denseness, is also what makes a bagel a bagel. It's not like it's a donut, you know, it has a totally different texture from a donut or from regular bread. I remember a long time ago, I think I even made my own bagels. I was really into baking for a while and baked my own bread and, you know, made pancakes and did a lot of cooking for this one period of time in my life. And I have vague memories of making my own bagels too. And if I remember right, part of the process of making bagels is boiling them. Like after you make the dough in a very special way, you actually shape it and then you put it in boiling water. Is that right? Or am I remembering this all wrong? But I think you do boil it for a while and then you bake it. So that gives it its special texture, I assume. Anyway, while I was at Braverly, I realized that I was about halfway to Tesco already. So I thought, since I'm halfway to Tesco, I might as well walk the rest of the way and do a bit of shopping. So I'm kind of on my way to Tesco, and I think the rest of this video is going to consist of me walking and talking again, and a bit more of a media roundup, because as I said in the previous video, for the past little while I haven't been out exploring very much. I haven't been much of a good tourist. I've been watching a lot of TV shows and movies, reading, listening to podcasts and that sort of thing. That's partially because it's been raining quite a bit here as well. Ooh. Another movie that I saw recently that really stuck in my head for various reasons is called Palm Springs, starring Andy Samberg. I think it's quite a recent movie. And it was interesting to me because it was another one of these Groundhog Day themed movies. You know, there's so many movies like that where a person gets caught in a time loop and they live the same day over and over and over again. And the classic example that everyone thinks of course, is Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. So I think people think of these movies as Groundhog Day movies now. And yeah, Palm Springs is a Groundhog Day movie. Andy Samberg's character, Niles, I think his name was, he's living the same day over and over again. And I mean, I enjoyed it very much. It's a fun movie, which you'd expect from Andy Samberg. He's a bit of a comedian, you know, he's a funny guy. And the movie seems to have been connected with his Lonely Island production team. Huh. I think when I was looking at Google Maps, this road over here can be a little bit of a shortcut. Not a shortcut for me, but I can get off this busy road for a few minutes. Man, the traffic can really get to you after a while here. So let's see if this, I can cut down this quiet road for a minute. But yeah, I enjoyed Palm Springs, though I have to say it was missing a little bit of the heart that you see in Groundhog Day. And another good example is Russian Doll. That's a TV series that I watched recently, where, you know, the main character is also caught in a time loop. But the thing about Groundhog Day and Russian Doll is that for the character to escape from the time loop, they usually have to grow personally. You know, like there's something wrong with them as a person. In Bill Murray's case, I guess he was quite a self-centered, selfish person who didn't really care about other people. And he eventually escapes from the time loop by growing as a person, you know, and learning to care about other people. So he becomes a better human being, and through that mechanism, he escapes from the time loop. And in Palm Springs, it doesn't really work that way. Huh. I appear to be in my own time loop. Not a time loop, but at least I'm in a dead end. Here's the street that I was walking down, and I thought it would curve around and go back to the main road, but it just dead ends here. So this was not a way for me to go. I have to go back to the main road again. Google Maps definitely shows this road continuing and then going back to the main road, but I guess since Google Maps mapped this road, someone built this factory over there or whatever that is. So now, yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. So I don't want to say too much about Palm Springs because almost anything I say kind of gives away the plot. And Palm Springs takes this time loop story and has a couple of unique twists on it, some very interesting elements they introduce, and I don't want to give those away. But as I was saying, with Groundhog Day and Russian Doll, the main character has to sort of escape from the time loop by evolving as a person, you know, as a human. But in Palm Springs, it doesn't really have that element because how they, you know, the methods they think about for escaping from the time loop are more technical. And Niles, the main character, he does grow as a person. I mean, how can you not when you live the same day, you know, thousands of times probably? You know, you have to change over time, you know, and people in these time loops, they do follow the same general patterns, which I find interesting. You know, you might go into a period of time where you're just so happy and excited because you can do all these pleasurable things over and over and over without any consequences. You know, all the things you've ever wanted to do. There's no risk and no consequences, so you can do anything. And they go through that period. And then they go through a period of utter depression, you know, where they just do nothing day after day after day. And then they actually try to kill themselves over and over and over again. And none of that gets them out of the time loop. And then they eventually settle into a period of time where they do some self-improvement because, hey, why not? You're living the same day over and over and over again. You might as well do some things like Bill Murray, you know, he learns to play the piano. You know, he takes a piano lesson every day and he gets a little bit better and better and better until he learns how. You could learn languages, you could read books, you know, read every book in existence. You know, you could do all these self-improvement projects if you live the same day over and over again. So you can't help but become, you know, a better person. But so Andy Samberg's character, Niles, he does do some of these things and he becomes a better person, but that isn't really connected to how or if, you know, he gets out of the time loop. So I found the movie didn't have the same heart as Groundhog Day did, but still I enjoyed it very much. You know, it's a fun movie. So yeah, kind of gets my seal of approval. Particularly if you're into Groundhog Day style movies. I've actually seen quite a few movies like that in recent years, and almost all of them I've enjoyed. I can't think of any, time travel, time loop movie that I haven't enjoyed. I just like that sort of thing. I guess I have a bit of a science fiction side to me. I really enjoy science fiction. Like in Star Trek. In every Star Trek series, they always seem to be finding themselves in time loops and trying to figure out a way to get out of the time loop. And that usually involves saving the Enterprise from blowing up or something. Another really good one is Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. Quite like that one. Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal was quite good. And there's some quite unusual ones out there that I liked. One called The Endless, kind of a low-budget independent film, very twisty. It'll really bend your brain watching The Endless. And that one is connected to another film made by the same guy called Resolution. Those two kind of come as a pair. So those are very interesting films, Resolution and The Endless. Another kind of time travel, time loop movie that I really liked from quite a few years ago was called Primer. And Primer is another kind of a low-budget independent film, very interesting. And I really enjoyed a Spanish film called Time Crimes. So if you ever manage to get a copy of Time Crimes, check that one out. But I will say with Time Crimes, whatever you do, don't watch the trailer. The trailer for Time Crimes. It's on YouTube, of course. But the trailer gives away the whole story of the movie, just about. And it's a terrible trailer anyway. The movie is much better than what the trailer shows. And all these time loop movies, they kind of connect with another movie I saw recently. Because, if you're in a time loop living the same day over and over and over again, it's almost like you're immortal. It's a bit like immortality. And just by chance, I happened to watch a movie that was about immortals, starring Charlize Theron. It's called The Old Guard, and it's the story of a kind of an immortal band of mercenaries who have been alive for centuries, in some cases alive for, thousands of years. And they've all been kind of warriors throughout history as, mercenaries. But something I find interesting in these immortality movies is that you might think being immortal, being able to live forever is an amazing thing. Who wouldn't want to be immortal, if you can't die and you can live forever? But there can be a real dark side to that. And there's a scene in The Old Guard that really drives that home, that, normal person like me, if I get trapped somewhere, like maybe I go into a mine or into a deep cave or something, and then the cave collapses and all these rocks fall on me and trap me in the cave. I might live for a couple hours, but then I die and my pain is over. But if you are immortal, you have to be very careful not to get caught in those situations. Because imagine if you live forever and you can't die, and you go into a cave and the cave collapses. There you are, trapped in this cave for eternity, And maybe, as in the case of these immortals in The Old Guard, they do die and they do feel pain, but then they just come back to life again. So if you are in a situation that kills you, but then you just come back to life over and over and over again, you're basically living in pain and dying tens of thousands of millions of times, for all of eternity. And that can be quite horrifying, can't it, I think I remember one of the first stories like that I ever came across was a short story, kind of like a novella. I think I read it back in my high school days. It was kind of a story, a science fiction story called I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream. If you really want to be horrified, track that down. Again, it's sort of takes the approach of someone who cannot die and what that really means, So the old guard had a lot of that in it. And I remember the same situation from Interview with a Vampire, these vampires that live forever. And there was one scene where one of the vampires was captured by competing vampires or something. And they put him into a brick wall, like they walled him up, bricked him up into a wall. And I think they put him in there upside down, so he's like standing on his head. And the idea was that since he can't die, he would be trapped in there in pain forever, Again, you or me, you put us in that situation, eventually we're going to die and our suffering will end. But if you're immortal, you got to be careful because, you're never going to die and your pain will never end. So, So anyway, The Old Guard, that movie, is really nothing special. It kind of plays out exactly as you would expect a story like that to play out. But I mean, Charlize Theron, she's always good. And it's an okay way to pass a couple hours. So I've arrived at Tesco. I'm going to pop in here for a few minutes, do a bit of shopping. I'm not going to bother bringing the camera in with me and filming anything. We've seen it all before. It's just basically a Tesco full of shops and grocery stores. So I'm just going to do some shopping and I'll check back in with you once I emerge. Ooh. That's it for the Tesco run. I've got all of my snacks and goodies and staples here and in my knapsack. You can still see things changing around Thailand all the time as the country opens up and goes from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, phase 4. I don't know what phase we're on in terms of opening up, but there used to be only one doorway open into Tesco, but now all the doors are open and going in is a lot simpler than it used to be. They still want you to register either in a booklet or with the QR code. But I've noticed that most people don't even bother doing it anymore. It is there, the system's in place, and there's people sitting at tables monitoring things. But if people just walk in and walk out, nobody stops them. So I guess it's voluntary at this point. One interesting thing I've noticed is that here in Thailand, they're very good at graphics. Like they have all these, new policies in place for the phases, what is open and what can't be open yet and what times things can be open. And also the various categories of people that are allowed into the country, like foreigners that are allowed in or repatriated Thais, and all the steps they have to go through to get into the country and the quarantine and the permits and the documents and the registration and the monitoring. All these systems are in place, and all these government departments produce these graphics, kind of like flow charts that show the various systems, the procedures that you're supposed to follow. And you just see these graphics everywhere online. It's really quite something to see. Every day I see new ones popping up here and there. They're all very professionally done, beautiful graphics showing you step by step exactly what you're supposed to do. It's quite interesting. So got all my Tesco shopping done, heading back to the guest house to drop everything off, and continuing with my media roundup, I guess. Moving on to podcasts. I listened to quite a few interesting ones this week, a lot of them from Radiolab, very interesting podcasts that I listened to. One in particular really jumped out at me because it sparked an idea in my head. And this idea, I'd never really thought of it before, is that kind of like in your lifetime, I mean, you go to school intensely at the beginning of your life. You know, you go to kindergarten, grade school, high school, then university, and you're learning all the time. You know, you're reading science books and history books and every other kind of book you can imagine. And then when school is over, you kind of stop learning, at least in a formal sense. So the knowledge that you have, the facts, you know, that are in your head, are kind of frozen in time. So that the things that I believe to be true are the things that I learned pretty much in high school and university. You know, when I was reading a lot of science textbooks and things like that. And then you could go through your entire life believing all these things to be true, to be, you know, just what everybody knows. And yet knowledge didn't stop in the meantime. In fact, I think in the last 40 or 50 years, I mean, every science, every discipline you can think of has been advancing its knowledge by leaps and bounds, you know. There's so many fields of study now. People are learning so many new things. But unless you make a deliberate effort to keep up with all this knowledge, you kind of fall behind, right? So in fact, I keep discovering new facts, things that I thought were true, and they turn out not to be true at all, because knowledge has moved on, but my knowledge from high school is still frozen in place, you know? My knowledge is based on what people believed back in the 80s, you know, back in the 70s and 80s when I was going to high school. But things have changed since then. And I keep coming across these things in podcasts, like especially in podcasts like Radiolab. So the example I'm thinking of is from a Radiolab podcast called Body Count. That was the name of the episode, Body Count. And I'll put a link to it in the description. And the basic idea was they were investigating this idea that, you know, I've heard it a million times, so people wonder, you know, based on the population of the world, are there more people alive today, like right now in the world, however many billions of people there are there more people alive today in this precise moment than have ever lived throughout all of history? I hear that a lot. You know, people often say, you know, there's more people alive today than have ever lived in history if you add them all up. And in this Radiolab podcast, they decided to investigate this and find out if it is actually true or not. So that was quite interesting. I won't tell you what they discovered, but that's not the main point for me. The main point is that they started talking about North America in particular. They started talking about whether there's more people alive in North America today than in all of history put together. And they started to investigate this. So they ended up talking about when people arrived in North America. And of course, the story is that they came over from Asia, you know, through Siberia, and then they arrived at the land bridge, and they walked across the land bridge from Siberia to modern-day Alaska, and then into, you know, what is today Canada and the United States, and then down into Mexico, Central and South America. And in my head, you know, this land bridge was like a very narrow strip of land. If you look in that area today, you know, the Bering Strait, you see a lot of little islands there. And in my head, and what everyone told me, is that at one point the sea level was lower and there was land connecting all these islands together, and it formed this narrow land bridge, and these people walked across this land bridge into North America. And the image I had was of North America as this very verdant, green, beautiful place with lots of forests and mountains and animals and lakes and rivers, all this kind of thing. So that's what I knew to be true my whole life, that there was this very thin land bridge. People walked across the land bridge into this paradise of North America. But it turns out that none of that is true. As I was listening to this podcast, you know, new research has taken place over the last few decades, and the accepted wisdom now is completely different from that. What really happened is that at that time, of course, there was the Ice Age. And during the Ice Age, a great deal of the water on the planet was frozen into glaciers and ice caps and all that kind of thing. So the sea levels fell dramatically. But it turns out that that part of the ocean, you know, at the Bering Strait, is actually quite shallow. And they estimate that water levels dropped about 400 feet worldwide during the Ice Age. And the ocean there is so shallow that it created not a narrow land bridge, but in fact, when the sea levels lowered, it created a brand new continent that if you look it up online, it's called Beringia. This area, you know, between Siberia and Alaska was about 1.6 million square kilometers in size. And during the Ice Age, for complicated reasons, North America was covered in ice towards the north, and Siberia, you know, and Russia was covered in ice. But this area that they called Beringia, this new continent essentially that formed between them, was not covered in ice and was in fact a grassland, like a grass steppe. And if Beringia existed today at 1.6 million kilometers in size, it would be something like the 17th or 18th largest country in the world. I mean, it was a huge area, as big as Alberta and British Columbia in Canada combined. So instead of people just waltzing across a land bridge, what happened is that these people moved into this new continent and lived there for thousands of years. They essentially settled in this grassland of Beringia between Asia and North America. And then they lived there for many, many thousands of years. And then as the Ice Age ended and the sea levels began to rise again, this vast area of grassland started to go underwater. And this took, you know, a fair amount of time to happen. And as the water slowly invaded this area, the people were pushed to the side, and all the people that were living in Beringia, they had no choice but to migrate. Either they could choose to go back to Asia, or they could go in the other direction and move into North America. So, yeah, I'd never heard that before. This was all brand new information to me. As I said, in high school, I learned all about this narrow land bridge connecting the continents together. And right up until this week, I assumed that was true. But it turns out that was completely wrong. And in fact, this land bridge was not a bridge at all. It was more like a land continent. And instead of this image of people just walking across the bridge and going to North America in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, this was actually a process that took place over something like 15,000 years, So, yeah, it's a fascinating story, but more than that, it kind of made me realize how our knowledge gets frozen in time based on when we learned it. And unless we keep up with new developments, we end up believing all these things that turn out to be not true at all. Hey, buddy. My new friend. Hey there. We'll see how far he chases me. I guess I'm slowly leaving his territory. He's letting me go. It is something I've noticed. I talked about it before, that when I walk around Mesot, normally the dogs leave me alone. They don't bark at me or chase me. But if I have a camera, if I'm holding my GoPro or my Panasonic, then they chase me. Because there's something about me holding a camera like this that looks very unusual to them. It looks threatening or something. It looks strange. So then they decide to chase me and drive me away. But yeah, it only happens when I'm holding the camera, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm back in Mesot proper on the main street here. And I'm almost back at my guest house. And those are kind of all of the thoughts rolling around inside my head today. So, as I said when I opened the video, the good news today is that here in Thailand, apparently foreigners have been given another reprieve, essentially. They gave us until September 26th for the visa amnesty. So that's good news. We still don't know all the details yet, though. So today, I assume, later today or tomorrow, we'll get the official, documents will be released. And I'm assuming there's going to be little gotcha elements to this proposal. What I mean is that the original 90-day visa amnesty was left kind of wide open. So there was no sense of what would happen at the end of it. So now that they've given us an additional 60 days of visa amnesty, if they don't really specify anything else, all that means is that at the end of the 60 days, we'll be right back to where we are right now, with nobody knowing what will happen next. So I'm just assuming there will be some more details about this proposal forthcoming. Something about, okay, you can stay until September 26th, but at that point, this and this and this is going to happen. I think there's going to be more information will come available about this proposal. So I'll be looking for that today and tomorrow. And until then, as I said, almost back at my guest house. It's the end of my walk for this morning. And I'll see you in the next video. Keeping on with the podcast theme, there's one other very interesting podcast I listened to this week, also from Radiolab. It's actually an older podcast from them. I've heard it many times, to be honest. It is called Space, and I'll put a link in the description. And I find it really interesting because it's kind of all about the scale of the universe, just how big and how old the universe is relative, very much relative to us, our own lifetimes. And I always enjoy stuff like that, partially because I find it interesting, but also because it helps to put things in perspective. If you think you're having, problems in your life for whatever reason, it can help sometimes to think about the overall scale of the universe and kind of put things into perspective. And there was one thing in this, I won't talk about the whole podcast, of course. I think it's over an hour long and it's full of information. But there's one little piece where they're interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson. He often shows up in these things, of course. And he was talking about a display at his museum. And this display is 100 yards long. So, more or less 100 meters long. And it is meant to illustrate the history of the universe. So the universe is, more or less around 14 billion years old, they calculate. And this 100 yards in his museum covers the entire 14 billion years, which means that as you walk along, every step that you take, you cover about 70 million years. And when you get to the very end of the display, the very last step that you take, the last, one step that you take as a human represents all of the time from when the dinosaurs ruled the earth right up until today. And then at the very end of the, got sweat rolling into my eyes. It's pretty hot today. And at the very end of the 100 yards, there's a single strand of human hair. Just one single piece of human hair. And when you take that into account, the left side of that human hair represents when humans were, painting cave paintings. That's, how long ago that represents. And the right side of that hair is today, like right now, as I'm talking into my GoPro. So that the width of that single human hair is all of human history from when we were living in caves right up until, today, this moment right now. I find that's pretty amazing to visualize it like that.